The farmhouse stood alone at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by frozen fields that stretched toward distant tree lines. Emma had inherited the property from her grandmother 6 months earlier, and this would be her first Christmas alone in the old house. She'd spent the evening decorating a small pine tree she'd cut from the back acreage, stringing popcorn and hanging the vintage ornaments she'd found in the attic. The radio played carols while snow began to fall outside, collecting on the windowsills in soft drifts. Around 11 o'clock, Emma heard sleigh bells. At first, she thought it was the radio, but the sound came from outside, clear and crystalline in the cold air. She went to the kitchen window and looked out at the yard, seeing nothing but falling snow illuminated by the porch light. The bells rang again, closer now, accompanied by the crunch of footsteps on the front porch. Emma's heart quickened. The nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. She hadn't heard a car approach. 3 deliberate knocks echoed through the house. She moved to the front door, her hand hovering over the deadbolt. Through the frosted glass panels, she could make out a dark shape on the porch. Maybe someone's car broke down, she thought. It's Christmas Eve. They need help. Emma opened the door. The man on her porch wore a red suit, but it was wrong. The fabric looked antique, almost Victorian, with tarnished brass buttons and fur trim that had yellowed with age. His white beard hung long and unkempt, and his eyes were completely black, reflecting the porch light like an animal's. He smiled, revealing too many teeth. "Ho, ho, ho," he said, but his voice was layered, as if multiple people spoke in unison. "I've come to check my list." Emma tried to close the door. His boot blocked it. "You've been very naughty, Emma," the thing said. "Grandmother's will. You convinced her to change it. You isolated her those final months. Also, you could have this house?" "That's not true," Emma whispered, but guilt twisted in her stomach. She had encouraged her grandmother to add her name to the will. She had convinced her that the other relatives only wanted her money. The creature in the red suit stepped forward, and Emma stumbled backward into her hallway. The temperature plummeted. Her breath came out in white clouds. "The Christmas spirit sees all," it said, reaching into the large burlap sack it carried. "And I bring gifts for the naughty children." It pulled out a length of rusty chain. Emma ran. She bolted through the living room toward the back of the house, hearing the chain dragging across her wooden floors behind her, accompanied by those awful sleigh bells. She grabbed her phone from the kitchen counter and fled into her grandmother's old bedroom, slamming and locking the door. Her fingers shook as she tried to dial 911. No signal. The screen flickered and went black. The doorknob began to turn. "No locked doors on Christmas Eve," the voice sang from the hallway. "How else can I deliver my presents?" Emma looked around desperately. The bedroom window led to the side yard. She unlocked it and shoved it open, wincing as cold air and snow blasted inside. She was climbing through when the bedroom door exploded inward. She dropped into the snow and ran, her socks immediately soaking through. The barn. She could hide in the barn. Behind her, she heard the thing emerge from the house. The sleigh bells rang with each step it took. Emma reached the barn and yanked open the door, plunging into darkness that smelled of old hay and motor oil. She climbed into the hayloft and burrowed into the frozen straw, trying to control her breathing. The barn door creaked open. "Emma," it called, "I have your present right here. Don't you want to see what you've earned?" She pressed her hand over her mouth, watching through gaps in the floorboards as the figure moved below. It had grown larger, its red suit splitting at the seams. The face was no longer remotely human. It stopped directly beneath her hiding spot. "There you are," it whispered. A hand shot up through the floorboards, impossibly long fingers wrapping around her ankle. Emma screamed as it pulled, dragging her toward the gap in the wood. The splinters tore at her clothes and skin. Then the church bells began to ring in the distant village, midnight, Christmas Day. The thing shrieked and released her. Emma looked down to see it convulsing, the red suit dissolving into smoke and shadow. In seconds it was gone, leaving only the smell of sulfur and a pile of ash in the shape of a man. Emma lay in the hay until dawn, shivering and crying. When the sun finally rose, she walked back to the house on numb feet. On her porch, she found a small wooden box. Inside was a handwritten note in her grandmother's script, "I forgive you. Merry Christmas." Emma sold the farmhouse 3 days later. She never spent another Christmas alone. Detective James Rivera had worked Christmas Eve shifts for 15 years, but he'd never responded to a call at the Westfield shopping mall quite like this one. The security guard who met him at the employee entrance was pale and shaking. His name tag read Kevin and his eyes were too wide. "It's the Santa," Kevin said. "Something's wrong with him." "Drunk Santa?" James asked, following the guard through the service corridors. "Hi, Santa?" "I don't know what he is," Kevin replied. They emerged into the main concourse. The mall had closed an hour ago, but all the Christmas decorations were still lit. The massive tree near the center court sparkled with thousands of lights, and holiday music played over the speakers. Santa's workshop sat in the middle of the court, an elaborate setup with fake snow, candy cane pillars, and a large throne. Santa was still there, sitting motionless, his head tilted at an odd angle. "Did you call an ambulance?" James asked. "We tried. They can't find the mall. GPS keeps taking them somewhere else." And our phones, Kevin held up his cell. The screen showed nothing but static. "They've been like this for 30 minutes? James approached the workshop slowly. The closer he got, the more wrong everything felt. The temperature dropped with each step. The Christmas music warped, playing backward. "Sir?" James called. "Sir, are you all right?" Santa's head snapped upright. "Detective James Rivera," it said in a voice like grinding ice. "How wonderful of you to join us." The thing stood. It wore the Santa suit, but the body inside moved wrong, joints bending in impossible directions. The white beard parted to reveal a mouth that opened far too wide. "Do you remember the Christmas of 1994, James?" He did. He'd been 12 years old. He'd stolen money from the Salvation Army bucket outside a grocery store. $53? He'd never told anyone. "How do you—" "I know everything," the thing interrupted. "Every lie, every cruelty, every dark little secret you've buried." It stepped down from the workshop. "Did you think there would be no accounting? No reckoning?" Behind James, Kevin screamed. The detective spun to see the security guard clutching his head, blood running from his nose and ears. "He sees his sins now," Santa said. All of them, playing on loop in his mind. The affair with his sister-in-law. The DUI he never reported. The child he pretended wasn't his. Kevin collapsed, convulsing. James drew his weapon. "Stay back." The thing laughed, and the sound echoed from every speaker in the mall. "Bullets? For me? Oh, James, I'm the spirit of Christmas judgment. I've existed since humans first marked the winter solstice. I am the shadow behind every Santa, the truth beneath every gift." "You're not real," James said, but his hand shook. "I'm very real. And tonight I'm checking my list." It raised one arm, and throughout the dark mall, things began to move. The mannequins in the store windows turned their heads. The stuffed animals in the toy store pressed against the glass. Every mechanical Christmas decoration whirred to life, all of them focused on James. "Your turn," Santa said. Jamesy's mind exploded with memories. Every mistake, every hurt he'd caused, every moment of cruelty or selfishness. He saw himself at 12, pocketing that money while a family behind him struggled to spare change for the donation. He saw himself at 19, drunk driving and nearly killing someone. He saw himself last year, accepting that bribe, looking the other way. "No," he gasped, falling to his knees. "Please, do you repent?" The memories intensified, each one a knife in his conscience. He saw the faces of people he'd hurt, heard their cries, felt their pain as if it were his own. "Yes," he sobbed. "Yes, I repent. I'm sorry." The pressure in his skull reached a breaking point. Just when he thought his mind would shatter completely, it stopped. James lay on the cold tile floor, gasping. Kevin was beside him, also breathing but unconscious. The Christmas music played normally now. The decorations were still. Santa's workshop was empty. On the throne sat a small card. James crawled over and picked it up with trembling hands. You have been judged and found wanting. Use this second chance wisely. I will be checking again next year. James helped Kevin to his feet when the security guard regained consciousness. Neither man spoke as they left the mall. The phones worked again. The ambulance found them immediately. James Rivera submitted his resignation the next morning. He spent Christmas Day at a homeless shelter, serving food. He returned that money to the Salvation Army with 30 years of interest. But every Christmas Eve since, he wakes at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, hearing sleigh bells in the distance, wondering if he's done enough, wondering if the Santa is coming back. The rental listing had seemed perfect. A secluded cabin in the Cascade Mountains, available Christmas week, surprisingly cheap. Thomas and his teenage daughter Rachel had jumped at the opportunity. Their first Christmas since the divorce, and Thomas desperately wanted it to be special. They arrived on December 23rd as snow began to fall. The cabin was rustic but charming, with a stone fireplace and wide windows overlooking a frozen lake. Rachel immediately claimed the loft bedroom, her mood brighter than Thomas had seen in months. "This is actually pretty cool, Dad," she said, and his heart soared. That first night, everything was perfect. They made hot chocolate, played board games, and Rachel even smiled at his terrible jokes. She went to bed around 10, and Thomas stayed up a while longer, watching the fire and feeling hopeful about their future. Around midnight, he heard the singing. It came from outside, distant but clear. A Christmas carol in a language he didn't recognize. The melody was beautiful but somehow wrong, the notes not quite matching any scale he knew. Thomas went to the window. Through the falling snow, he could see lights moving between the trees on the far side of the lake. Torches or lanterns bobbing as they moved. There had to be 20 or 30 of them. The singing grew louder. He watched the lights progress around the lake shore, heading toward the cabin. As they drew closer, he could make out figures carrying the torches. They wore what looked like animal skins and masks, their faces hidden behind carved wooden features that caught the firelight. They were coming directly to his cabin. "Rachel," Thomas called. "Rachel, wake up!" His daughter appeared at the loft railing, rubbing her eyes. "What's wrong?" "Get dressed, now we're leaving." But when Thomas grabbed his keys and opened the front door, the figures were already surrounding the cabin. They stood in a circle in the snow, torches raised, still singing that haunting song. Thomas slammed the door and locked it. "Dad, what's happening?" Rachel was beside him now, her voice tight with fear. "I don't know." "Call 911? She grabbed her phone. No signal. The singing stopped. In the sudden silence, Thomas heard footsteps on the porch, then knocking, rhythmic and patient. "We know you're in there," a woman's voice called. "We've been waiting for you." "You've got the wrong people." Thomas shouted. "We just rented this place." "We don't know you." Laughter from outside, from multiple throats. "Oh, but we know you, Thomas Brennan. And we know Rachel. We've known your family for generations." Rachel grabbed her father's arm. "How do they know our names?" "This cabin," the voice continued, "belonged to your great-grandfather. He built it in 1887, and on Christmas Eve that year, he invited our ancestors to share his fire. Then he murdered them while they slept. 23 men, women, and children. He threw their bodies in the lake." Thomas's mouth went dry. He'd done some genealogy research years ago. There had been a Thomas Brennan in his family tree, a logger who'd worked these mountains. But nothing about murders. "That's not our fault," he called. "Blood debt carries through the generations," the woman replied. "Every 25 years, someone from your line rents this cabin. And every 25 years, we collect." "You're insane. Look under the floorboards by the fireplace." Thomas didn't want to, but something in the woman's voice made him move. He pulled back the rug near the hearth and saw that one of the boards was loose. He pried it up. Inside was a leather journal, aged and water-damaged. Thomas opened it with shaking hands and recognized the handwriting from old family letters. his great-great-grandfather's journal. The entries from December 1887 made him feel sick. The murders were described in detail. The reasoning was purely economic. The indigenous family had claimed to valuable timberland. His ancestor had invited them to Christmas dinner, poisoned the food, and disposed of the bodies. "Oh my God," Rachel whispered, reading over his shoulder. "Your family has benefited from that stolen land for over a century," the woman outside said. "Your grandfather's logging business, your father's wealth, your privilege, all built on our bones." The windows exploded inward simultaneously. Torches flew into the cabin, landing on the furniture, the curtains. Fire spread with impossible speed. Thomas grabbed Rachel and ran for the back door. It wouldn't open. He tried the windows. All blocked. "Dad!" Rachel screamed as flames raced up the walls. "One life from your line for every life taken from ours." The woman's voice echoed over the roar of fire. 23 debts to pay. Your numbers 8 and 9. The smoke was suffocating. Thomas pulled his daughter toward the only clear space left, desperately trying to think. There had to be a way out. Then he saw it. The journal entry for December 26, 1887. His ancestor had written, "Should anyone from my line find themselves in this situation, they must offer true restitution. Return what was stolen." "The land," Thomas shouted. "We'll return the land, all of it. I'll sign it over to you, to your people, whoever you are. Everything our family built on what he stole, you can have it all." The flames stopped spreading. "Say it as an oath," the woman demanded. "On your daughter's life." "I swear on my daughter's life." "On my own, you can have everything." "We'll make it right. Please." The fire began to recede, pulling back through the broken windows like a living thing. The smoke cleared. When Thomas could see again, the torches outside were gone. On the porch lay a stack of legal documents already prepared. Property deeds, transfer papers, all requiring his signature. Somehow they listed every asset his family owned that could be traced back to the original lumber business. Thomas signed them all, his hand shaking so badly he could barely write. Rachel witnessed each signature with tears streaming down her face. When the last document was complete, the papers vanished. "The debt is acknowledged," the woman's voice whispered on the wind, "but not yet paid. You have 1 year to fulfill this oath. If you fail, we will take everything." Thomas and Rachel left the cabin at dawn. They never went back. It took Thomas 11 months to liquidate assets, fight legal battles with other family members, and transfer millions of dollars in land and resources to the tribal nation his ancestor had wronged. His relatives called him crazy. His ex-wife tried to have him declared incompetent. But on December 23rd of the following year, the final transfer was complete. Thomas and Rachel were eating dinner in their small apartment when a knock came at the door. Thomas opened it to find an elderly native woman standing in the hallway, holding a small wrapped gift. "The debt is paid," she said simply. "Your family is released." She handed him the package and left. Inside was an old photograph, damaged by water and age. It showed his great-great-grandfather shaking hands with a native family in front of a partially built cabin. Everyone was smiling. On the back, in his ancestor's handwriting, "Christmas 1887, before I destroyed everything." Thomas kept the photograph. He and Rachel spend every Christmas now volunteering at the Urban Indian Center, trying to build instead of destroy, to heal instead of harm. But sometimes late on Christmas Eve, Thomas thinks he hears singing in the distance. And he wonders how many other families carry debts they don't know about, waiting for their reckoning beneath the holiday lights.